All right, students, this is my backup plan in case Canvas goes down the first day of school. I'm recording this to Sunday night. I'm recording this on Sunday night. Again, this is the same lecture I'm doing in class, but this is just one in case, Canvas is overloaded, which may very well happen with the whole county logging in. Here are the three courses I teach: AP Macro, AP World, and AP European. All right, first thing you got to do, here's my email address, and you have an assignment due today that you're going to email to me, Jerry, Jerry.Russell, Russell, at ocps.net. I know that's not a good color to see there. And to the left here, this at Keynes21 to 81010, you're going to text this to that. That is for macro. Right here is for the Genghis 21 to 81010 at Genghis 21 is for AP World. And my favorite person to talk about probably in European history is Bismarck. I couldn't fit Iron Chancellor into the password line. It is at Bismarck 21 to 81010. These are my remind codes. This is how I communicate with my swim teams, my water polo teams, and my students. I know there's other ways. I love Twitter. I discovered Twitter last year, and I spend probably too much time on Twitter. And I know a lot of coaches use Twitter, but I'm going to stick with Remind at least, I think, for a while. I communicate a lot of stuff this way. I will warn you, you will get messages. I have a little game I played with the seniors. It's never worked out right. The macro kids, I give them an essay or a quiz every Friday. And you know how at the football games, I'm hoping we have football games this year, but the Friday night football games, how I call them the belly button queens. They get down there on the 50-yard line and they throw all the powder up in the air. I always like to try to send a message right at 7 o'clock saying your essays are graded from today. And one of these days, when I see that picture, I hope to see one of those kids grabbing for their phone to see what they got on that test. Anyway, the little game I played, one year I threatened to go down there myself and paint a letter on me. And somebody says, seriously? I'm like, no, you would all drop out of school. Anyway, just a little game I play, but I will tell you, I communicate a lot this way. You will get messages, and you really need to be on Remind. By the way, when I send you a Remind message saying email me, I don't want you to, respond to the Remind. I want you to send it to this email address. Anything that gets sent to me on a Remind, I may or may not respond to. I get it, but sometimes I get so many of them, they get lost. If you send me an email, it may take 2 or 3 days, but you should get an answer. All right, moving on here. All right, so why should you study for your AP exams? Okay, so a little math here. This is mainly directed at my macro kids. Usually my macro students have already got like 8 or 10 AP exams under their belt, so they're old hands at this. My AP World kids frequently, this is their first time. They're taking an AP exam, but a little math here for you. And so I used UCF as an example because, UCF is where Jesus went to school. But here we go, UCF. Now, a lot of you don't know this yet, but when you take a class, it's so many credit hours. Most classes are 3 credits. I had a few that were 4, and I had a class once called College Algebra and Plane Trigonometry. That was a 5-hour. Lord have mercy, I got a C and was glad to get it. What that means is if it's a 3-credit class, you meet 3 days a week. I've had 1-credit classes. Don't know if I've ever had a 2. But anyway, most of your college classes are 3 credit hours. So here's what this means. If you live in the state of Florida and you go to University of Central Florida, every class you take, it's $212 per credit hour. So if your class is worth 3 credit hours, that class is going to cost you $636.84. And by the way, this is the year. Usually the numbers on this slide are from 2 or 3 years ago. This is actually 2020, 2021. Okay, so it's $630 for a 3-hour class. If you are from out of state, and some of you, live here in Florida, but you're going to be going to college in Tennessee and Oklahoma and places like that, it would cost you $2,200. Okay, all right. So most college classes, you have to buy a $200 book. So here's what I'm telling you. Why should you study for your AP exam this year? If you pass the exam, it's should save you at least $800, $600 for the course, and $200 for the book. Now, and when we go to the next slide, if you're taking AP European, which is really my flagship course, that's really my specialty course is AP European. If you're taking that exam and you get a 4, you're going to hear me tell the AP World kids and the AP Macro kids, a 3 is great. You're not going to hear me saying that to the AP European kids. If they get a 4, they get 2 semesters credit. So that means they save $1,200. And if you have the book on that, it's up to $1,400. So there is a mathematical reason you should try to pass your AP exams. I know teachers at this school who are, I guess, in their 40s, who are still paying on their college loans. They borrow all this money, and I'm just telling you, there's a mathematical reason. You may, there's a presidential election coming up, and some people are promising free college and all that. That may happen, or it may not. But I will tell you, generally, nothing in life is free. There is a financial benefit to you passing an AP exam. So I'm just giving you some math here. Sorry for you 10th graders that I'm overwhelming you with these numbers. Got to remember, I teach seniors in economics, and this is their first time they probably ever had a teacher really discuss economics with a lot of them. Hopefully you've talked about economics with your parents. All right, how many credits do you get at UCF? Now this is going to be a little bit complicated. So let's move this down here. This is off the registrar's page. And what this is, if you take AP European, all right, I started with Euro. If you get a 3 on the exam, they give you credit in EUH 109. That stands for European History. Let me tell you what that means by it being a 1,000 level class. It will not count for your history credit. So if you get a 3 in AP European, fine, you get college credit, but you're still going to have to take a history class. If you get a 4 or 5, they give you credit in EUH 2000 and 2001. That's 2 semesters of credit. Okay, so a 3 is fine. You get college credit, but you really want to get a 4 or 5. Now in macro, I know at University of Florida, the last time I checked, macro, they gave you 4 hours credit with it if you get a 3. But if you get a 3 on the macro exam, a 3, 4, or 5, it all counts the same. You get credit in economics. Okay, so a 3, that's the reason you'll hear me say this. For you seniors, if you're sitting in my macro class, I'll tell you, hey, do as good as you can on the exam. A 3 is fine. You're not going to hear that in Euro. You're also going to hear a 3 is fine in World, because here you see it right here. If you get a 3 on the AP World History exam, and for those of you who've never had an AP class before, you get a score of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We did have a kid last year who got a 5 on my macro exam who went to Yale, and they don't give any credit at all. They don't give it. So he told me, he says, he gave me a really nice compliment. I'm going to take the exam, Mr. Russell, because I like you, but I don't get any credit for passing an exam. But that he's one heck of a student and one heck of a really nice guy. And I appreciate the $50 he earned for me. All right, so world history. So all 3 classes, a 3 is considered passing. In Euro, you definitely want to get a 4 or 5. And I'll put it this way. In Euro last year, the year that just ended, I had 10 5s. And so there's been years, 33, there's been years that 1/3 of the class in Euro got a 4. And it's not because I'm all that wonderful a teacher. Usually the kids that wind up in European history are really like the smartest kids in the school. It's an elective. World history and macro are a requirement. A lot of the Euro kids are kids who took me for AP World and I recruited them. All right, and some of you are going to be sitting in Euro this year. Also, a lot of kids in Euro this year whose names I don't recognize. So I'm assuming usually what I get is really ambitious kids. I can tell you that my Euro class last year did very well, and it is absolutely the smartest group of Euro kids I ever had. And you'll see some of them this year, the ones that were juniors last year, wearing purple shirts. That was the first year we ever got T-shirts for one of my classes, because last year was my 30th year and I thought I might be retiring, and it was such a good group of kids that I said, okay, we'll get a shirt this year. Anyway, I'm spending too much time on this. Let's move on. About me. So now I'm not going to talk about me the whole period, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spend about 10 or 15 minutes going through some things about my life. We were told on the first day of school, they didn't really want us doing content. They wanted us doing, easier stuff. Some of you had a really good easy time with this quarantine. Some of you have been miserable and have hated it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some facts about me. And then at the end, you're going to have an assignment where you're going to talk about you. Okay. So I was born, my mother's from Tennessee. My father's from North Florida. And they met when my dad was living in Miami and my mom was on vacation. They got married. And I was born in Hialeah, which is, one of the biggest cities down there in Dade County. Now it's called Miami-Dade, but it was called Dade County when I was born there. And it's basically part of Miami. And my best friends were named Mario and Aldo. I tell friends of mine, they say, "You're a Southerner, Mr. Russell. How come you talk fast?" And I always say, well, when you hang around Mario and Aldo and you're hanging out with the Cubans and they speak that machine gun Spanish, if you're going to get in a word edgewise, you need to jump in and talk fast. I don't know if that's really why I talk fast, but that's what I tell people. Had some very interesting discussions last year in my economics classes about socialism and capitalism between Cuban Americans born here. And I had two girls last year that came over from Cuba. Very different perspective on socialism between somebody born here and somebody born there. We may have some more of that this year. I don't know. Anyway, I was born in South Florida, but my family is from North Florida and Tennessee. And then we moved to Holmes County, very rural. I can tell you when I was growing up, I lived 5 miles from the nearest stop sign. It was 19 miles to the nearest red light. So we were way out in the middle of nowhere. I learned to drive when I was 13. I drove all over the place. There were no police up there. And if they were, they wouldn't have been interested, some 13-year-old driving, because you got these 8-year-olds up there driving their tractors down the road. Anyway, I grew up in a very rural area. You would think going from Hialeah, the big city, Miami, to a rural area, I would have hated it, but I loved growing up there. And a lot of my friends that grew up there couldn't wait to leave, and they hate it and they talk about it. I consider that I had a wonderful childhood in both Miami and in Holmes County. I graduated from Holmes County High School. All right, so I graduated from Holmes County High School. I wanted to go to University of Florida. For you FSU fans, I'm not a Gator, meaning, I never went there. I went to band camp there, no jokes, please, 2 years. I played several instruments in the band. I did go to band camp there, and I intended to go to University of Florida. Like I said, I wouldn't call myself a Gator. That's just where I was going to go. But I went to the local community college first. I found it very easy. I finished high school when I was 17. And so by age 18, I had finished my first 2 years. That used to be unusual, but now a lot of you doing AP and dual enrollment, you'll have your AA done by your senior year. So it's not unusual anymore. So I finished there. And instead of going to University of Florida, I went all the way out to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to a Christian school called Oral Roberts University. Very interesting. When I got there, a bunch of the new kids got together. I started through orientation with a bunch of freshmen. They became my best friends, and they were enamored of me because I was 18 years old and I was a junior, and they thought I was really smart. Of course, as you will find out, that's not true. I just believe in working hard, but I did go out to Oklahoma. Rather unusual. I'm a Florida boy. If I was going to leave, you would have thought I'd have gone to Tennessee, where my grandparents were from. But I went to Oklahoma for 2 years to a private school, and then I came back and got to Florida and got a job. I'm going to go over my jobs here in a few minutes. I'm talking a little fast because I want to get through this. And then eventually I went and got a master's degree in European history at UCF. And so I want to make a couple points here. This is more for the seniors and the Euro kids than it is the 10th graders. But look at my education. Accounting is a business degree. I have an AA, that's a 2-year diploma, college diploma in general education. I have a business degree, and then I have a graduate degree in history. So my educational background is scattered all over the place. And that's going to happen to a lot of you. And I teach. I'm very excited now. I tell friends of mine, because I get to use my accounting degree when I teach economics. And then I get to use my European history degree, obviously, when I'm teaching Euro and World. All right, that is my high school mascot, the Blue Devils. Very interesting. If you saw my little bio at the beginning, there was this guy who taught here in Apopka. He was the principal for like 30 years of Apopka High School. And he's a legend. His name is Roger Williams. Everything around Apopka is named after him. but he was principal of my high school in Bonifay, Florida for a short time. And it's interesting, he was there, and their mascot up there is the Blue Devils, which I thought was very interesting, being as it's, really religious, Southern Baptist town, that you have a mascot called the Blue Devils. And then, he came down here, and the mascot for Apopka High School was the Blue Darters. And so there's that. This is this is the community college I went to. They're known as the Chipola. Now it's called Chipola College. Junior meant the same thing as community does now. Like a few years ago, Valencia was called Valencia Community College. Back in the day, they called them junior colleges. They're the Chipola Indians, which I'm sure eventually, with today's, everybody changing names and everything, I guess that'll be cultural something. Calling themselves the Indians. I don't know how many Indians actually go there, but Native Americans, that's what they meant. But that's where I went and got my 2-year degree. This is Oral Roberts University, very religious school. This is the prayer tower. And when I went there, they had prayer 24 hours a day. Oral Roberts was one of these TV evangelists who built a university. And it was the only charismatic university of its kind in the world. And it was a school that focused on missionary work. Now, my AP World kids are going to hear quite a lot about this because we're going to be talking about the missionaries. We'll hear a touch of it in AP European. Probably won't come up at all in AP Macro. But this was a missionary school. And when you drove onto the main campus of Oral Roberts University, there were flags of like 75 countries flying. It's called the Avenue of Flags because there were students there from like 75 different countries. And so it would not be unusual to have a roommate who was South African, who was from Zimbabwe, who was from Nigeria, who was from France, who was from China. They were from all over the world. A very, very internationally focused Christian school. And then, of course, many years later, I got my master's degree at UCF. And I like to do memes, especially in Euro. We'll do a few in World, and usually we will do some in Macro, especially if it's Crazy Blue and White Day. But in Euro, we do a lot of them. Euro, it's a very name-heavy class, and I like that meme. This is my wife, who's Mrs. Russell at Wolf Lake Elementary. Some of you had her. My daughter here is also a teacher, so I'm a high school teacher. This is at UCF. I got my master's there. My wife got her bachelor's and her master's there. My daughter has her master's there in music education. She's teaching at Lovell Elementary this year here in Apopka. And she was assistant water polo coach the last 2 years. She's going to be coaching swimming and water polo with me this year. And so some of you already know her that are on the water polo team last year. This is my son. He subbed at Apopka about 5 years ago. It was really funny. He'd pass around a sign-in sheet and the girls would like write their phone number down because he looked like one of them. But you'll hear me talk a lot about him, especially in AP Macro. His degree is in video game design. And he is a video game geek from the word go. And 1 year on the water polo bus, him and his buddies had gotten together and designed a water polo game. And they put it in the place, Google Play, so you could download it on Android phones. And we were on the bus. And I told all my players I want them to download the game. It was free. And play the game. It was called Rocket Redneck. And something like that, Rocket Redneck. And for some reason, everyone thought the game was based on his father. I don't know where that would come from. But anyway, it's not on the Play Store anymore. But his goal is to be a video game designer. He makes cell phone apps for the government. It's all top secret. He can't tell me anything about it because then he'd have to, get rid of me. But the deal is he got his bachelor's there. All 4 of us graduated from UCF. So we're UCF family. All right, my hobbies. I got to pick this up. Reading, dogs, swimming, camping, hammocks, kayaking. The reason I'm doing this is because in your slide here in a minute, you're going to talk about the assignment you're going to do today. You're going to talk about your hobbies. Jeeps, and I love genealogy. There's a picture of me. I think right now we own 7 kayaks. I'm not even sure. That's my favorite. That is my favorite river in the world. That is the Swanee River. State song, obviously, is the Swanee River. I don't know why in these pictures I always look bald and fat. Nothing could be further from the truth. I recently have bought property on the Swanee, and I'm going to be going up there this weekend and quite a bit. And the econ kids, because I try to give them lots of economic knowledge, you're going to be hearing lots of stories about the Swanee property and how much I paid for the septic tank. I'm going to do everything I can in economics to try to make these numbers in the book make sense. And so those of you in macro, you've probably heard about me already. We're going to do some off the wall things to help you understand money, because most people at this point in their life, other than having a job, haven't had to deal with that a whole lot. This is me camping in Tennessee over the summer. This is my dog, my hammock. Anyway, we'll talk about this. One of my four-wheel drives. Here's my purple Jeep, and there's my dog. I call him my co-pilot. Enough about that. Here's my father and I in Canada back, I guess, 35 years ago, and I'm going to talk about him a little bit. One thing you're going to need to do for your assignment today is you're going to talk about your role model or your favorite person. A lot of kids don't like to talk about their role models. My father died in 94, and I'm not going to tear up and cry here. My mother's 87. She's still, she doesn't know who I am anymore, but she's going strong. But my father has been dead quite a long time, and I still miss him severely. And I would love for him to be here to tell me he was proud of me. I hope he would tell me that. But we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. And my last hobby was genealogy. And I do have to tell this one interesting story. AP World and AP European, you'll hear a little bit of this. World, we're going to talk about roots and where we're from. But my father, before he died, he told me that years before he met my mother, he had gotten a woman pregnant who had a baby girl. And I've always been interested in genealogy. I have at least one ancestor track back to Northern Ireland. I do this stuff for fun. And some of you probably know, if you've ever done a genealogy project, somebody in your family is a genealogy geek. And if you want to know who you're descended from, all you got to do is find out who the genealogy geek is. It's usually some aunt somewhere out in another state. And if you ever call them and tell them you want to know about your ancestors, your big problem is you won't be able to get them to shut up. They'll talk and talk and talk. But I am the genealogy geek in my family. So when my father told me he told me in the 90s that I had a sister out there who's a couple of years older than me. One thing I made sure to do is not fall in love with anybody older than me. You never know. But I've known about her. And so here's the story. About 6 months ago, I'd already done my Ancestry.com genealogy test, my DNA test. My wife's had hers done. My kids have theirs done, and I've gotten a lot of research. But I got contacted from somebody, and she says, I think we may be related. And as soon as I went and logged in and checked my DNA results, she'd just gotten her results back. I knew immediately this was this long missing sister of mine. And it's interesting. My father knew her mother in Miami, and when her mother got pregnant, she went back to Michigan, where she's from, to have the baby. But when we discovered each other 6 months ago, she lives just across Lake Apopka over in Lake County. And so it's very interesting that in the last 6 months, I've gotten to know this sister of mine. She's always been my sister, but I didn't know she existed. And this is us up kayaking a few weeks ago on Lake Ola in Tangerine up near Zelwood, Mount Dora. All right, moving on. Okay, jobs. And I got to pick it up. I'm watching the clock here. I'm 23 minutes into here. When I was 13, I loaded watermelons. Now, this is mainly for my economics class, okay? Because you're going to have the slide here in a few minutes. You're going to have to, answer if you've worked before. Some of you have, some of you haven't. It's not a problem. But this has helped me win lots of arguments. Those of you in macro especially, I talk a lot about politics. This is an election year this year. A lot of teachers try to kind of shield their political leanings. I do not try to do that. I usually tell kids which party I'm in the first day of school. Is as much trouble as we've been having with politics over the last few months. I'm not going to do that this year, but some of you have already listened to me and figured out exactly what I am. That's fine. But I've had a lot of arguments that I've won, I would say, because of this. Someone will tell me, you don't know what it's like to work in the fields. And I'm like, yes, I do. I worked out there loading watermelons at age 13, $2 an hour. Now, the difference is I wasn't working doing agricultural labor to support my family. It was just for spending money, but I did do that. I worked at a dog track, probably the most unique job. I do have another one coming up. And what we did there, I was the one that put the little, I don't know if you know anything about dog track racing. They have outlawed in Florida, which I'm sure you all are happy about that. I will say, I never saw, the trainers abusing the greyhounds, and those dogs love to run. Absolutely will just love to run. And so they are quite happy chasing that mechanical rabbit. But anyway, enough about that. But I would work about a 4-hour session in the hot Florida sun. My job was to put the little racing jersey on him, whatever you call it, and walk him out. And drunk people yelling at you, it's a gambling thing. And I did that. That was a pretty unique job. I had some interesting comments when I interviewed for jobs out of college, telling people that I worked on a dog track because they'd never heard anybody done that before. This is probably the most unique job. This hotel in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it was having construction done, and they didn't want kids playing on the elevators. So what they did, they had 4 elevators. They shut 2 down to do construction. So there was only 2 elevators left, and they were worried this was like a 40-foot high building, 40 stories. And so they hired these 2 people to, just sit on there. And when somebody would get on, I had a coat and tie on. I'd say, which floor? And they'd say 13. I'd push the button. Easiest job in the world. Very unique. They only had that while they had the construction going on. I worked my first job out of college, finished college when I was 20. I got a job in the bank. Now, you guys in econ, we have a whole banking unit. And I tell kids all the time, you are blessed in many ways to have me, because banking is considered the hardest unit in economics. And you actually have a teacher. I'm not saying I'm a great teacher, but experience is a good advantage. I worked in the bank. Best job ever had, other than teaching. I had to throw that in there. I worked for an airline for 4 or 5 years. I've flown to England for free. We flew to the Bahamas. I've flown there 4 times for free. Anyway, I worked at a car dealership. Not a happy experience. I worked in a hotel. The airline and hotel were my best jobs until I became a teacher. And I was working at the hotel when I was studying to get my teaching certificate, and I enjoyed the job so much. I almost gave up the teaching career to work in the hotel. But airline and hotel, I like the travel business. And I worked at Universal Studios for 5 years. You macro kids are going to hear all these stories. Do they affect your point of view? Now, here's my point. I am 58, about to be 59. I'm a baby boomer. You guys like to make jokes, Generation Z, about the boomers. Well, I am a boomer, one of the few left on campus. And here's what that means. That means I was raised by the so-called greatest generation, the people who won World War II, the people who shut down the Holocaust death camps. And so I've had all these jobs. And now you 10th graders, you haven't really probably learned a lot about point of view. The Euro kids have already had world. My kids are trained. Mr. Angio calls it sourcing, to look at someone's point of view. So you macro kids, you should know about that. What I'm saying is, someone with a business degree and a graduate degree in history, whose first job was making $2 an hour, who's worked all over the place in financial fields, does that affect my point of view? Yes. Does that mean, and a lot of you are going to have a different point of view on this stuff, especially in economics, than I do. Does it mean you can't learn from me? Does it mean I can't learn from you? But your life experiences, you guys haven't had most of yours yet. But you already had some. Does it affect your point of view? Yes, it does. It doesn't make you right or wrong, but you need to understand your biases in your point of view. Anyway, for those of you in a history class, that is a major thing for you to understand. All right. That's what watermelon loading looks like. That is not me, but I did this part right here. This is where this tough guy was. I'll tell you about him. The quarterback of the football team, his girlfriend would show up and watch him load watermelons. That was where the strong guy goes there. The weaklings are out here. I guess these guys up here were pretty strong. I never did that. This is the airline I worked for 4.5 years, Florida Express. Teaching, here's the years I started teaching. I'm not going to go over this. I've been an AP World Reader. Means I read AP exams since 2010. I've had lots of kids pass. I can't remember what my pass rate was 4 years ago, but I've had over 100 kids pass. And I have I teach nothing but AP. So I probably have more AP kids than probably anybody on campus. This does not mean I'm better than them. I'm not saying that, but this is the 3rd year in a row that I've had more than 100 kids pass. And so I've got a lot of experience, and especially when it comes to AP World, when I tell you I know what they're looking for on the exam, I do, because look how many years I've been grading the exams. All right, now, just some funny things here. This is captain of the swim team and water polo team, captain of the swim team and water polo team. These are kids who what I call threefers. Now she's a twofer, a header for AP World and AP Macro, but these two here, they were both swim team, water polo team, and a kid that I've taught 3 times in 3 classes I call a threefer. And this was Spirit Day last year. They tried to dress up like me. All right, so here's the final analysis here, what you're going to do today. I want you to send me an email. It was on that first slide. And I want you to answer these questions. Tell me your name. What are your hobbies? Okay, and if I'm always amazed at how many high school kids put down their hobby as sleeping. I used to think it was just a kid, who couldn't come up with anything. But actually, I think now a lot of your hobbies are, actually sleeping. But what are your hobbies? How did you cope with the quarantine? And that's probably the most important question here. You already saw that my hobbies are reading and camping and kayaking. I social distance. That's what I do for fun. So I actually have, and I apologize to those of you who've had a better slog of it the last few months. I had a wonderful summer. Me and my dog and my 4-wheel drive and my wife and all, we would do stuff. And, so I like social distancing, but, tell me what you did these last few months. Video game, how did you get along here? And by the way, any of these questions you don't want to answer, now don't skip them all, because when I get around, it's going to take me a week or so. You are going to get a grade for this, and I'm going to go over grades tomorrow. They didn't want us to do too much academic stuff the first day, but tell me what your job experience is. If you've got none, some of you may have jobs, like mine, just out of the blue. I had a kid last year I gave during the 4th 9 weeks, and he's in macro. He knows, he's going to know. I don't know if he's in 1st or 4th, but he's going to know when I tell you that I'm talking about him, who apparently worked construction the whole time. And so when I did what I did for essays or quizzes is we would do a Zoom quiz, and I'd ask him questions, and he'd be riding in the car with his dad, going to work. So I know some of you guys work, and some of you have pretty entertaining jobs. Again, if you don't have any work experience, there's no shame in that. Just, tell me, what you've done there. Your favorite book, and I know a lot of you are going to say you don't read. If you don't read books, just say that. My favorite book, I don't know why, is Treasure Island. And it's about a kid getting stuck on a boat with a bunch of pirates. And the most famous one, of course, is Long John Silver. And I read that book probably 4 times. To this day, one of my favorite things is going out in the intercoastal. Some of you know what that is. Or a river and finding an island. Me and my dog will kayak out there. I've got some pictures. I couldn't find them in time for this. We'll kayak out and set up camp on an island and camp for 2 or 3 days. And I think I love water. I mean, think about what I coach. I coach swimming and the water polo team. I love anything to do with water. And so my favorite book as a kid was Treasure Island. So tell me your favorite book, your favorite movie. Mine's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Your favorite TV show. Mine's one you probably never heard of called The Sopranos. Role model or heroes. Who do you like? Who do you want to be like? Anyway, I don't know really who my hero would be my father. My role model, my dad had a lot of bad things happen to him. And so I don't know that I'm glad that my life has not turned out like his. He worked very hard to make sure that I had an easier life than he did. But who is your role model or heroes? If you don't have one, say that. But most of you have someone you really look up to. What do you want to do? And I don't want to just say, where are you going to college? Are you going to tech school? Are you going to the military? Please don't put I'm going to jail. But tell me what you're planning on doing after high school. And then what do you want to be? What's your career? When I was a kid, I wanted to be a treasure diver. And at one point, I wanted to be an ornithologist, which is someone who studies birds. And I really probably could care less about birds. But the deal is, I just thought the word was cool. So we went around telling everybody in 4th grade we wanted to be ornithologists. But I have to say that in the last 20 years, I've realized all I want to be is a good husband and father, and I want to, there's some other things, but I won't get into my religion here, but I want to be a good history teacher and, economics too. I want to be, so anyway, write all this down on a piece of paper, actually type it up. You can either write it and send me a picture, take a picture of your phone and email it to me. Best thing to do is type it and send it to me and get this to me today. And it took me 35 minutes to do this. So hopefully you are going to have time. So at this point, if you're watching this by YouTube, you just freeze frame the video and, send me the questions.